to share something with you. That might put me in a very negative light, yeah.
Relationships are not my forte.
See if someone grabbed up my wife or something completely different ballgame.
I'll walk away from here, and this has been like a therapy session.
Razabani for IFL TV, proudly sponsored by Everlast. With me on Zoom, the knowledge Spencer Fearon. Spence, firstly, as always, how are we doing?
Yeah, I'm really good. I'm really good. Even better for speaking to you, Raz. And like I say in each and every interview, if anybody is going through anything at this present moment in time, because things are a bit peak, you know what I mean? Reach out and go speak to somebody. Go get advice. Go get help. That's what I got to say.
No, absolutely. Spence, I know we only spoke maybe 3 days ago, and normally we don't speak so soon, but obviously the reason for us getting together today was obviously hearing the sad news yesterday. One of the great referees, the great icons, famous catchphrase he had was "Let's get it on." Mills Lane sadly passed away, I believe, at the age of 85, 86. Someone I'm sure you know a lot about over the years, has been involved in some mega fights. So just kind of open question on what are your memories of him?
It'd be very difficult to speak about Mills Lane, not about speaking "Let's get it on," and him always doing that with his nose. He'd always done it, right? When the fights were being announced. And I was fortunate. I met Mills Lane in, what was it, 2004 in Vegas. I met him and Bert Sugar together, who's the legendary sports writer. And Mills Lane, yeah, pretty nice guy. But I think what Mills Lane was, I think Mills Lane was like, right now, we're getting certain referees who want to be celebrity, right? Without trying to push it to be a celebrity, but they do want to be celebrity. Mills Lane was a celebrity referee because he was a no-nonsense referee, and he was pretty firm. If you look, like, he done a plethora of world title fights, but like within that plethora of world title fights, the "let's get it on" phrase, right, where he came out and said, "Oh, let's get it on," that was from Jerry Cooney, when Jerry Cooney got stopped by Larry Holmes. You know what I mean? At the time, that was the biggest heavyweight title fight, the richest prize fight in boxing history. And that's where he originated the "let's get it on" from. He was a good ref, because look at the fights, and I'm talking like great fights that he refereed. I mean, you talk about Larry Holmes, Jerry Cooney fight was a great fight. You speak about the fight that he likes to speak about himself. Well, he did speak about himself. He said, like, the night that Donald Curry, who was it was for the undisputed world welterweight championship. Donald Curry had the IBF and WBA crown, and Milton McCory had the WBC crown, and they met for the undisputed crown in the freeweight belt era. And Donald Curry knocks out Milton McCory, and he says on that night, Donald Curry most probably would have beaten any fighter in the world. He was as good as any fighter in the world. So it's like, it's being grateful for someone like Mills Lane, because usually, and this is the truth, usually if there's no controversy about a fight, we don't usually remember the referees. Think about it. You know what I mean? Give it 2 more weeks, I'll say to you, who refereed Tyson-Holyfield, Derek Chisora? You ain't gonna remember. Right, so remember if there's been controversy, but also we do remember, like, when you see a great fight and guys are involved in barn burners and fights, we do also remember the referee, because the referee not getting too involved and letting the action run, and they remember the class work that they did. And Mills Lane was one of those people who was actually, it was class. He was a class referee. I do remember I was hurt when Lloyd Hannigan, who was the WBC welterweight champion in '89, when he boxed Marlon Starling to defend his WBC crown against Marlon Starling, and he gets stopped in 9 rounds. That was February of '89, that fight. But I remember when Mills Lane waved that off, and that was kind of like a bitter pill to me, because I love Lloyd Hannigan. But Mills Lane was a fantastic referee. And I don't know if you remember, he also had his own TV show on, what was it, on MTV. It was Celebrity Deathmatch. So like he retired, well, I think he retired, when he retired, about 98, he retired, around about them ages, but around about that time he retired from being a referee. But he still carried on because he had Celebrity Deathmatch. So he was the voice of Celebrity Deathmatch. Yeah, it's a sad loss. It's a sad loss because I know of so many fights that he was involved in. The famous one was the Mike Tyson ear biting. What was that? June 28th of 1997. The only reason why it stands out in my mind, because that was the day that my professional pro debut, right? Where he disqualifies Mike Tyson for biting Evander Holyfield, and he goes nuts over it. And like people looking at him like, oh, but what about the butts? And he said the butts weren't intentional. But you know what I mean? How many times do you want a guy to get bitten? And he swears on camera. Remember this? But hey, very sound, solid referee, and he refereed some of the greats. You know what I mean? Go for it. He refereed Michael Nunn, Frank Tate. What was that? 88. That fight was. Michael Nunn versus Frank Tate was like Michael Nunn's coming out party. That was for the IBF middleweight championship. Frank Tate was the gold medalist, so they called him Frank the Gold Tate. He won the 84 Olympics. He won the gold medal at junior middleweight, and Michael Nunn wiped the floor with him. And for you young kids out there, seriously, go and watch that fight. That was one of the best boxing exhibitions that I've ever seen. Seriously. And Mills Lane was the referee for that fight. You know, Mills Lane, so many good fights, man. He's been in so many, I could go through the whole list of so many good fights that he's been involved in. You know what I mean? When Tommy Hearns knocks out Roldan, won Domingo Roldan for the WBC middleweight crown, he was there. He was a ref. And that's when Tommy Hearns made history to become the first man to win 4 world titles in 4 different weight divisions. That was history. Mills Lane was there. He was the 3rd man in the ring. So that "let's get on" phrase is not, you knew when you heard that phrase that what you was gonna go and get, because we've had so many referees who try to have catchphrases, right? But they haven't really tested no disrespect to him. I don't want to call them out to upset him, right? But his one has tested the time barrier. His catchphrase was synonymous with boxing. And it's a great loss, man. It's a great loss, because when you hear Mills Lane has passed away, because Mills Lane just seemed like a cool guy. Man, he was actually a cool guy. And you know what I mean? God rest his soul. And I hope that his family, my condolences to his family, but I hope that his family have guidance over this precious time.
Spencer, you mentioned an incident there of that famous incident of Mike Tyson, Evander Holyfield. Now, normally, if that was to happen in today's environment, in today's boxing, we wouldn't hear from the referee. The referee would just leave the ring and go back in the locker room. But I remember that, as you mentioned it, when he was actually interviewed and was asked why, he was actually questioned on multiple occasions. Why did he stop it? Why didn't he stop it with the headbutts? Why didn't he give Mike more opportunities? Why didn't he take points off? He was questioned, and he was such a ruthless individual. And yeah, absolutely right, a no-nonsense referee.
He was a no-nonsense referee. Well, look, and you know, because he was an ex-Marine, right? He was an ex-Marine who boxed professional, right? In like the 60s, he boxed professional as a welterweight. So he knew boxing, and they took the cartilage out of his nose, so he had no bone cartilage in it. They removed it. He was that guy, man, no-nonsense referee who, because he boxed as well. I'm not saying like, I'm not fighting down no referees that haven't boxed before, but because he boxed and he kept himself in shape, he knew the game. You know what I mean? And this is no disrespect to people who are involved in boxing who've never boxed before, right? But there is a different kind of empathy that you'll have with a fighter when you've boxed. And also, he didn't just box amateur, he boxed professional. So there's a big difference. So I think that he kind of understood fighters in a better way, and I think that translated more so when he was refereeing, and that's why he was such a good referee.
I know over the last 18 months, there's been a lot of decisions, even that we've questioned and we've spoken about on camera about certain robberies that have taken place and the referee getting it wrong. But the example that you've just given, Spence, is it important that the board, bring on board fighters and fighters who actually want to be referees, because they have, again, like you said, a better insight and better understanding of that fighter mentality in the ring?
100%. I think not just in boxing, but I think even down to on things where you got guys who are working as whips, guys who are working within the boxing fraternity within itself. I think a lot of it should be given to fighters and ex-fighters, simply because I think there's a more of a general understanding when you have somebody who has come from the fight game or the fight fraternity who's now working inside of the sport, even in little things, I think that is very, very important. Let alone me talking about trainers. Forget about that one, because I will speak about loads of ex-fighters working in that capacity of light inside boxing, but sometimes it doesn't happen. But I think that they should, because there's a greater understanding when you're dealing with ex-fighters who are dealing with professional fighters who are fighting currently. There's a different kind of synergy. I'm not knocking nobody who hasn't come from it, who's not, especially when it comes to the training, right? I'd like to know that the guy that knows certain experiences, knows what it's like when you're feeling a stinging in your eye, you think it's sweat, and it's not sweat, it's actually your own blood. You know what I mean? When the fact of the nervousness of going into a fight, all of those kind of things concocted and then placed into one place makes me as a person on the outside knowing that, well, that fight is in safe hands. And I think what Mills Lane did, fighters knew that he was an ex-fighter, number one, but they also knew that he was an educated man because he was a judge, right? In a legal sense of being a judge, not a boxing judge. So I think the fighters felt comfortable with somebody like Mills Lane. And he was also no nonsense, right? There were certain things like, I've noticed, like the higher the celebrity is or the higher the star is, like sometimes you'll turn a blind eye or you'll have favoritism. There was no favoritism inside Mills Lane. Go watch on any one of his fights, especially his world title fights, you go watch them, right? I remember the first time I actually properly saw him was actually on the Larry Holmes, Jerry Cooney fight, right? That was 82. But if you watch the stuff that he did, he was incredibly fair, he was incredibly honest, and he was a great referee, and may God have mercy on his soul.
You mentioned that he was a judge, obviously professionally as well, outside of boxing. He was a district attorney, I believe, top of my head. He also said it's crazy, because he said that whole Mike Tyson incident, because it became more than just a sports headline, that's how he got this TV show, Judge Mills, which I think had 500, 600, 700 episodes in the late 90s. But it's crazy how an incident in the ring created such a profile for him also outside the ring after his retirement from the sport.
Yeah, but we have to be real. That incident wasn't just a little tiny incident. That was Mike Tyson. That was Mike Tyson in the rematch with Evander Holyfield to get stopped by Evander Holyfield some 6 months prior. That fight was humongous, right? And we have never seen something like, for the World Heavyweight Championship, to see another human being bite another human being. We've never ever seen that in a boxing ring. It was crazy. It was, and I remember at the time when it happened, I remember certain people were justifying Mike Tyson's actions. No, but Evander Holyfield was deliberately biting him. He was deliberately biting him, right? There were things in the game which are professional fouls, that you could do things to be clever. Evander Holyfield is a very, very clever fighter. Very, very clever fighter. So he'd know how to do certain things dirty, but they'd be on the side of the referee. But what Mike Tyson did then was absolutely ridiculous. But it's kind of cool right now that, I mean, they buried the hatchet on that, and the two of them are friends. I remember there was on Oprah Winfrey about 10 years ago. And now Mike Tyson's got these little air bite things for Christmas. I don't know if you've seen the advert. So for that, Yeah, Mike bites. Yeah, I need some Mike bites, man. I need some Mike bites. Right. So, yeah, I think, yeah, I've got nothing more to say on Mills Lane Bar. Like, I just think it'd be fitting to shout out the great man in Mills Lane because he was an absolutely fantastic referee. And that man was actually my childhood of being the third man in the ring. And like I said, go back and try and recite how many referees that you can call in great fights. You don't remember him unless there's some massive controversy. But because he was such a good referee, you'll always remember him.
Spence, always great to catch up and gather some and gain some knowledge from you regarding our boxing industry. We're going to leave this subject today. Obviously, we're not going to discuss anything else because we want to speak only about Mills Lane on this particular video. But yeah, we've got obviously an event this week with Josh Warrington, and obviously next week we've got the last show of the year. But we will definitely get one more in before the end of the year and maybe a little recap of the last 12 months.
Yeah, 1,000,000%. Let me just say this. I'm a big fan of Josh Warrington. And that Lopez guy is no joke. He's a serious guy. I saw what he done to Isaac Law. I was ringside there when I was doing bits for ESPN. That guy's no joke. But I'm still tipping Josh Warrington to come out victorious in this fight. He may even touch the canvas, but I've got Josh Warrington winning that fight comprehensively on points.
Spencer Fearon, IFL TV, thank you very much.
I'm going to share something with you that might put me in a very negative light, yeah.
Relationships are not my forte.
See if someone grabbed up my wife or something, completely different ballgame.
I'll walk away from it, and this has been like a therapy session.